To another video. Today we're going to be talking about loops. Uh, Another important concepts in programming. One of the five fundamental concepts I think you need to know. So yeah, let's just get started, guys. So what's a loop? A loop is how you iterate through some range in programming. You can iterate through a list of objects. You can iterate through a range of numbers. So for the first example, the demo we're gonna do here, um, yeah, for the first demo we're gonna do here today, guys, we're gonna go through looping from numbers 1 to 10. Yeah. So how do you define that in Python? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna say for. That means for I. So I is a it's a variable, so it's gonna take on different values as it goes through the loop in the range of 10. So when you have this range function here, guys, it's gonna return a range of numbers. So it's gonna go from 0 to 9. That's the definition of this function. So this comes with Python, so there's something that's just as is. So when you do this, it's gonna go 0 through 9. So we're saying for every number from 0 to 9, print it out pretty much. So I is gonna take on different values as it goes through that range of numbers. 0 to 9 in this case. Even though it's written 10, it goes to one less than whatever is written here. So if I had to put 100 here, for example, that would go all the way to 99. Yeah. So let's clear that part out. Let's print. Let's do another example here, guys. So now we just don't print the number. We actually do something with that number. So what we're doing is we're saying do the same. So print out numbers from 0 to 4, because we write 5, but it goes one less. But what we actually do is we actually create an output string and we add this text. So every time it's going to do this, right? So whatever is defined within uh like tabbed from the for loop, it's going to happen every time we go in this for loop right here. So what we do is we add 1 to that number, which is why we actually print out 1 to 5 and not 0 to 4. So we're converting whatever that number is. So say it's 0, it would go 0 plus 1, and that would be 1. Convert it to a string, and then concatenate it with this other string, and then print it out. So you have to just be careful, guys, when you have the range, to just remember that you're going from 0 to 1 less. Now there's other ways you can manipulate that, right? You could go 1 to 5, and this would print out from 2 to 5, right, guys? You could also define your increments here. So say we go increment of 2, it's gonna go 2 to 4, right? So it's you can manipulate the range function, but the point of the video is to go through loops, so we're not gonna spend too much time explaining that. We can explain that in another video, guys. So let's take another example of a for loop here. And in this for loop, we're actually using conditionals. And if you haven't seen my video on conditionals, go back to my last video. There's a video on conditionals, so we explain what it means to have an if else statement. We also explain the elif. So this is pretty much just your programming logic, your different branches to take decisions. So let's print this. Let's run this and see what it does. So when it's 1, so when the number is 1, because we start from 0, it's going to be actually 0 to 3 in the range, but we're adding 1, right? So if it's 1, we're going to say this is the first number. If it's 2, it's the second number. If it's 3, it's the third. And if it's 4, it's the fourth, fifth, and so on. Now when we get to 12, for example, or some number like 20, like 22 is supposed to be 22nd, so we'll need to add another case for 22nd for numbers that end with 2, actually. 12 is actually not a good example because it's 12th, so 12 would still work. But if you're going to do 22nd, 32nd, and stuff like that, you're going to need to have another logic to correctly print that out. So I just actually put this example here to just kind of give you an example of why sometimes when you run a program, you see something like it doesn't make sense grammatically. So that means they usually forgot a case. So they would say it ran one times, for example, or something happened one times. So that's because they didn't actually consider the case where it's the first one. So that's just the example there. It's still a for loop, still runs the same way as the other examples. And this is one more example of how a for loop could be used. Um, Now we haven't actually talked about lists because that's a bit more of a advanced concept. It's kind of like a data structure, but I could explain this in another video. It's not the point of this video right now, but this is how you define a list in Python. So you have the square brackets and you put a list of items and you separate with comma. And so we define a list of fruits, and what do? We print them out. So we can actually say we get the length of that, and then we do for the same syntax for an item in that range. So if say the length is like 3, in this case it's 1 to 3, so it's going to go 0 to 2. And when you number lists, this is going to be the 0th, the first, and the second. So it starts from 0 as well. So this is like a typical theme in computer science where you start numbering from 0 and not from 1. But another way to actually do this is to do this right here. So you can do something like for item in a list of fruits, and you can just do print, and you can do print item. So let's see what that does. Prints the same thing. Yeah, so I already ran it, so it doesn't change, but it's printing out the same thing. So there's two ways to do actually to loop through lists. You can list using the getting the length and using the range function, or you can just loop by using this special syntax for lists or data types that are like sequences. So yeah, so let's go to while loops, guys. So while loops are another type of loop. It's another type of loop. So yeah, so let's run this real quick. Um, Actually, I'm just gonna comment this off for now because it's not part of the first example I want to show. So if we demo this, guys, we first thing we do actually we import time, like a module that comes with Python as well. So you can do time functions on this. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna set a variable of count to 1, and we're gonna go while it's less than or equal to 5. We're gonna print that number out. We're gonna sleep for that number, and we're gonna increase. So we're gonna increase the variable to 1. Now, how does a while loop work? So a while loop runs until some condition fails. So when we set this to 1, it's actually going to be 1 less than 5. So this is going to be true. So it's going to run. It's going to go into that loop. And remember, so what happens in that loop is what's tabbed from where the while is defined. So you got to remember this in Python. Like this is critical. Like you have to for conditionals and for loops, you got to always tab and keep everything in that while loop in on the same tab to the same with the same amount of space. So so what are we doing here? So we go count less than 5. It's true. So it's gonna print once. It's gonna go again. Count less than 5. Print 2. It's gonna sleep for 2 seconds. 3 sleep for 3 seconds. 4 sleep for 4 seconds, and 5. So and it's gonna terminate because when it runs for the fifth time, it's going to come back here and say it's going to increase it by 1, and it's going to be 6. And it's going to say it's 6 less than or equal to 5. That's false. So it's going to go to whatever comes afterwards. Nothing comes afterwards, so the program actually comes to an end. So that's the first example. Now this is an example of a bad while loop, where if we just ran this, it would keep running because we don't have any condition to actually terminate that while loop, right? So when you have a while loop, your condition has to fail at some point. Now there are programs that actually start with a while loop like this, but that means it's usually waiting for something to happen, and it probably depends on the input of a user to actually terminate, or it's a forever ending program that runs in the background or something like that. So this is how that would work with a while loop. Now, if we actually wanted to terminate that, we could just put a break and it would break out. So you could have some condition that some maybe for example after like 5 seconds it's gonna just break out of the while loop. So yeah, that's the introduction to loops. Pretty much very simple breakdown of it, just to just give you an idea of what it is when you're starting your programming journey. So yeah, like, subscribe, and follow me for more videos.